Coming up in Jamaica House Weekly, zones of special operations extended from Mount Salem and Denham Town. Prime Minister calls for greater accountability and an increase in efficiency within local government and departs for the African continent. These and other stories come your way next. Prime Minister Andrew Holness is currently in Namibia for the first official state visit by a Jamaican head of government to that country. Mr. Holness is accompanied by Culture Minister Olivia Grange, Dr. Julius Garvey, and officials from the Foreign Affairs Ministry. While in Namibia, the Prime Minister is expected to hold bilateral talks on visa exemption, culture and youth development, as well as sign memoranda of understanding on sport and political cooperation. He will have discussions with the Namibian private sector and tour the nation's port authority. Talks will also be had with the Jamaican and Caribbean nationals living in Namibia. And Prime Minister Holness will participate in the renaming of a street in the country's capital in honor of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Jamaica's first national hero. While on the African continent, Mr. Holness will participate in the 10th BRICS Summit being held in Johannesburg, South Africa. As chairman of CARICOM, the Prime Minister will bring regional perspectives to the BRICS plenary session and the BRICS Plus meeting. The BRICS nations are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. For this year's summit, the BRICS states are joined by the UN Secretary General, Jamaica, Argentina, Indonesia, Egypt, and Turkey. Prime Minister Holness will also hold bilateral talks with leaders of the BRICS countries and invited states. During his official working visit to South Africa, Mr. Holness will be joined by Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Kamina Johnson-Smith. Before his departure, the Prime Minister sought and secured extensions for the zones of special operations in Mount Salem and Denham Town. At last Tuesday's parliamentary sitting, Mr. Holness said the zones were having a spin-off positive effect on national security across the island.
As a point of fact, there are overall reductions in homicides, and particularly firearm-related incidents.
The 60-day extensions begin after the current operation expires on September 4 for Mount Salem and August 16 for Denham Town. This will be the 6th extension for the Mount Salem zone and the 5th for Denham Town. The House of Representatives also approved an extension of the state of public emergency in St. James, which would otherwise have come to an end on August 6. Last Tuesday also found Prime Minister Holness in Montego Bay for the opening ceremony of the inaugural Local Governance Conference. While there, he pledged central government support for strengthening accountability systems at local authorities. Asserting that local government institutions have a direct impact on citizens' quality of life, Mr. Holness said his administration would ensure that they operate at the highest standards.
The accountability goes through several phases. The ultimate phase is sanction. That if something goes wrong in the administration of the delegated authority that you have an obligation to report, but you also have a duty to correct and to prevent the reoccurrence of the error or maladministration.
Also at the conference, Prime Minister Holness said he would be examining the building approvals and permits process to reduce delay and increase efficiency. He also cautioned local authorities to desist from exerting what he referred to as a territorial nature when issuing building approvals and permits, causing delays which he said hinder growth targets.
And I'm absolutely committed to the process of getting government efficient. So I'm taking this opportunity to raise my concern to the local government institutions that we cannot allow internal territorial behavior to slow up national progress.
The Prime Minister implored the officers to use the Application Management and Data Automation Amanda system, a software designed to track and manage the development application process.
We can't spend all this money to put in place a system, to use a technology-generated, supported system, and then we don't use it.
And Prime Minister Andrew Holness called on municipal corporations to train community members to become disaster first responders. The Prime Minister, who is chair of the National Disaster Risk Management Council, recommended that young people through the HOPE program and other entities are engaged to assist in times of disasters.
No matter how the government puts out its national campaign, the power of the councillor sitting down with his voters and explaining to them the dangers that they face and having locally structured programs to facilitate their movement, there is nothing more powerful than that.
Back at his office, Prime Minister Holness convened a meeting to discuss developments in the formulation of a policy to treat with plastics. He also chaired a meeting of the National Partnership Council. In addition to receiving updates from the Urban Development Corporation, Mr. Holness was presented with a report on how to reduce violence against women and children. The report was compiled by a working group from the Partnership for a Prosperous Jamaica. And that's all the stories coming out of the office of the Prime Minister this past week. Be sure to join us next time for more updates.